Hey Meg, did you know that love actually is all around us?
Is it really? I had no idea.
Surprise! Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of First Dates and Soulmates. I am your host, Nikki, and I am joined, as always, by my lovely co-host, Meg Casebolt. Today we are continuing Christmas in July in celebration of Meg's upcoming book release, Peppermint Bark No Bite. If you have not pre-ordered it, get thee to a bookseller and get on that. And today, as you may have already realized, we are talking about love, actually. Meg, what this holiday classic, this movie, this cultural phenomenon of a film. What is your history with Love Actually?
Well, I think you're right to call it a cultural phenomenon because, as we discussed in last week's episode, I don't watch Christmas movies. I don't seek them out in the way that some people do as a way to celebrate the season. But this came out when I was in college. And so it was 2003. And so it was like me and my sorority sisters all went to the movies in Philadelphia and we went to see this movie. And each of us had different favorites. And I think because it was such a showstopper of the cast being so well known, it really was a cultural phenomenon. And we quoted it all the time to each other. We each had our favorite characters and plot lines. We had the soundtrack, and when you're in an environment like a sorority house, one person likes something and then it just blazes through the house. So I was obsessed with this movie. And now looking back on it, I'm like, what?
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Nikki? What's your history with Love Actually?
So actually, I don't remember when this came out, but I do remember very vividly watching it in the residence at university.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody loved it. It was, one of those movies that somebody would put on in the common room and everybody's like, oh my God, Love Actually. And people would run to the common room to watch it. Because, it did come out in 2003. I was still in high school at the point. So I don't think I watched it when I was in high school. Definitely watched it in university. And so many of my friends still refer to it as their favorite Christmas movie. And I liked it. I would definitely watch it at Christmas. As the years have gone by, my feelings about it have drastically changed, which I'm sure we'll get into. But I also think this was one of the first films, at least that I can think of, that had this type of ensemble piece where storylines were intertwining. And as we've said so many times on the show, we love a good connected universe.
Hell yeah, we do.
Right? So this structurally should be everything that I like. It's got interconnected storylines. It's got great characters. This has a stacked cast.
Oh my gosh.
It is phenomenal. It's written and directed by Richard Curtis, who did Four Weddings and a Funeral, Notting Hill, Bridget Jones's Diary, basically all of those kind of rom-coms from the late 90s and early aughts. They were Richard Curtis. So it should have everything that I like. And now.
But it doesn't. Spoilers.
There has some things that I like, and there are some things that make me fast forward through that section every time. But again, it does have some great moments in it. It has some creepy as hell moments in it. It has some moments of what exactly were they trying to say with this plot point? Mm-hmm. But overall, it's something fun. If we still had channels that we would browse, and if this came on the air, I would probably stop and watch it. I don't think I would seek it out.
Yeah. Sometimes, especially as a parent, there are times where I'm like, when is my kid old enough to watch this? We're not a big Christmas household. My kids don't get Santa because we don't need to talk about this. But I've shown them Elf because I love Elf. And this also came out at the same time. I went to the same movie theater and I still feel really good about Elf. Whereas Love Actually, I'm like, no, I don't know if my kids ever need to see it. I don't feel like it's the iconic movie that I thought it was at the time. I don't know if I would stop on. I might stop and watch a scene and then be like, oh, here's that weird plot line again. Skip. I think I would make it through maybe about half the scenes before I'm like, don't really care about this anymore.
Yeah, true. And I think I love looking at this type of film because now so often, if there is a film that comes out with an interconnected universe, people are like, oh, it's like a Love Actually.
Yeah.
We had some of the Gary Marshall films, and we had Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, New Year's Eve, none of which were that good. But they still kind of explored the same structure where, all of a sudden you realize that all of these storylines are connected somehow. Maybe they are family members, maybe they are coworkers, maybe they are friends. But it was kind of fun to see what people are doing when they're not with other characters. because it's not their relationship that's moving the plot forward. They are moving their own plot forward separately and then kind of like coming back to be like, hey, what's going on? This is what's going on. So for that, I do like it. And again, stacked cast, but damn.
And I think, like
it's got some things.
We both agree that we love interconnected series, right? Where like you have a novel that taps into something else, whether it's everyone lives in this small town or everyone touches this gold coin or something like that. But in this case, it really does feel like not all of the relationships are romantic, where it's like, oh,
Yeah.
Emma Thompson and Hugh Grant are siblings, right? Like, so it doesn't have to be every couple is a romantic couple. Which is kind of refreshing, but also kind of problematic.
I do like it because I think the point it tries to make, even by its very title, even by the opening, voiceover, which is if you're ever feeling gloomy about the state of the world, just go to the arrivals area of Heathrow Airport and just see how excited people are to see family, friends, loved ones return from wherever they are. And I think there is something sweet in that. There is something nice in that. But it is talking about the variety of different relationships and that not everything is romantic. And going back to our last episode about different types of holiday romances, I think it needs to be that Christmas is the setting for this. Because I was thinking, I'm like, could this be made just as a winter one? Could it be made as summer? Could we set this at like July 4th? It wouldn't be because it's in England, but if this was 4th of July weekend, could this still work? And I don't think it could. I think there is something with these types of plots other than the rock star, this is about getting the top of the charts at Christmas, which is a big thing in Britain. If you take that out of it and, it's a Christmas concert, could that just be a spring concert?
Right. Or
could there be all these things?
Keira Knightley's plot line about they had this wedding and it happened to be a winter wedding, but it didn't have to be set in a winter versus some of the, the prime minister, that could happen year round. That part didn't have to be at Christmas. It's when we get to the holiday party. It's when we get to the Christmas concert and the Christmas lobster. Some of those things are, the caroling going door to door. Like there are specific micro tropes that fit into it that are Christmassy, but it's not like every single one of these is Christmas.
No. And I think that's what's interesting because if you take the storylines individually, none of them need to be at Christmas. Really, they can happen at any point. But I think because they are happening within the same film, there is no other time for them to be but at Christmas.
Right. When else is the prime minister going to make out behind the curtain when everyone else is standing there to watch the curtain open? Is it just a school play? It could be. Parents could just show up for a school play, but, it just adds that extra level of conflict and tension.
So one of the main framing devices used within the film is between Billy Mack, played by Bill Nighy, an aging rocker, and his manager, Joe. And to your point, this is one of the storylines that's not necessarily romantic. It's more of like a friendship, a longtime friendship between a rocker and his manager. And his whole thing is he's recording a cover of a song, but making it Christmas to try and hit like top of the pops at Christmas.
Which, like, does anybody really care who's number one on Christmas?
Apparently, yes. This is a huge thing in Britain.
Is it?
Like, it is actually a huge thing.
Oh, I always wondered, is this really that big of a deal? Does anybody care? But okay, apparently it's a big deal.
My UK friends have told me that this is actually a real thing, and it is actually like a big deal to get like to have like the number one song. So I guess that kind of makes sense, but it is funny to me, like when he's doing the song and he keeps singing the wrong lyrics and he has like these weird women dressed in Santa costumes.
And he has he's like
weird
doing a weird man squat.
He's gyrating all over. So while they don't interact with the other characters, they are often shown like his song is heard in the background of other character scenes. He's seen on a TV screen in other character scenes, but they almost serve as like the meta framing device of he's showing up in the background.
And when you have that countdown, the screens that are just like 3 weeks till Christmas, 2 weeks till Christmas, there's not really another plot line in there that has a ticking clock the way that his does. So when they're doing those, this is the time period that this is happening, it almost always goes to him at that point, not just to show that time has elapsed, but also to say like, how is he doing in this quest to get to the top?
Yeah, and I think it is funny because like the whole thing is like he's kind of like this aging rocker that is somewhat irrelevant now and is kind of coasting on past success. But he's like, but if I get this, he gets invited to Elton John's party, which he gives up to hang out with Joe to get drunk and watch
You know, and okay, so I just think of him as like Keith Richards. Like, there's no
Yes.
way that Keith Richards is going to care about like invitation to Elton John's party. And second of all, like, who watches porn with someone else?
Apparently,
With a
this is a
friend, I
thing
should
that
say.
people do.
Yeah.
Especially like an older male friend that, so their plot line in the overall film is fairly small. But I do like that moment when he comes back because he's kind of like been talking shit about Joe the entire thing. Like, it is not shown that they have a close relationship whatsoever. It's very much like, you are my minion, like, you are my manager. I am like I am going for a resurgence.
I'll do my betting and yeah, and let me fat shame you as long as I'm at it.
Yeah, then he comes back and he goes, I just wanted to hang out with you. Actually, a lot when that scene happened, a lot of people did read it as being queer coded. That he did, like, because I think he does say like I love you, but it is presented more as like a you're my bro, like
Mm-hmm.
you're. I actually think he does say to Joe like you're the longest relationship I've ever had, and I think there is something very nice about male friendship.
Yeah.
That's like, even though I treat you abominable
God.
and I pay you because you are on my payroll,
I pay you
you're
to
my
be friends with
bro.
me, but now we're friends. Let's watch porn. It's a weird
Yeah,
situation, but okay.
yeah. It's fun though. I think it's a cute storyline, but other than that, I don't think there's anything too dramatic or too
And I think
big
also one of the
with that
things
one.
that this movie does really well is the soundtrack and the way that it ties in
Oh
both
yeah.
Christmas music and pop music into the soundtrack in a really,
Mm-hmm.
and it was contemporary music at the time. So I feel like this is also like the thread that ties together so many of those stories is not just, he shows up on the screen in the background and it's kind of a callback to that beginning story, but they bring that song back a couple times that then ties into whatever the
Mm-hmm.
next musical cue is. So it's a good storytelling device to have a musical tie-in throughout the whole thing.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, let's talk about what I think is probably the most, I'll say, long-lasting storyline out of this, and it is Juliet, Peter, and Mark. So Juliet, played by Keira Knightley, marries Peter, played by Chiwetel Ejiofor, and his best man, Mark, played by Andrew Lincoln, of Walking Dead fame, which is so funny when you see him in The Walking Dead and then you go back and watch him in this. So I'd say this is probably like the most impactful scene just because of the cue cards. Those cue cards have been used in so many of an SNL skit. People talk about, tell them it's carol singers, and he shows up and he's got like the things at the thing. Okay, this plot line is probably the one I have changed my mind on the most since I originally watched this, Meg.
I have not changed my mind. I always thought it was a bad idea. I always thought, like, I remember being in the theaters watching this and being like, what the fuck is he doing?
Yeah, so for those of you who have not seen this,
Why are you listening to
Juliet
this
and Peter,
episode? What have you been doing for 20
Juliet and
years?
Peter get married, and Peter's best man is Mark. He's kind of videotaping it. There's like a surprise choir, but there is this vibe that his best man Mark, played by Andrew Lincoln, does not like his new wife. It's kind of like, yeah, when I first saw it, I actually thought that Mark was in love with Peter.
Mm.
I thought it was kind of like a queer storyline of like, you're taking away my man. I don't like you. So later, when Juliet shows up to Mark's place, like, hey, our videographer totally shot the bed. The video footage is unusable. I know you had a camera. Can I see your footage? He's like, no. And again, she's like, you must like just really hate me. So she sees it to find out that he was close up filming her the entire time because, as it turns out, he's actually in love with her. And this is part one of the weird shit that Mark does. One, it was never meant to be seen. It's still creepy as shit. It's very stalkerist to like film Juliet close up.
And I'm also going to say, like, what best man just has a camcorder? Like, it's really rude as an activity. Even if you were actually recording the whole thing, like, no, you hire a videographer for a reason. It bothered me even before this plot line. Like, ew.
I feel like they set it up that like that's his job or like that's something he does as a hobby.
Maybe.
So that he wanted to like be involved in that way. And he's the one that gets that surprise gospel choir organized for them. But the most famous scene is the cue card. So after Juliet sees this recording and sees that like, oh, he was zoomed in on my face the entire time. This is also not usable footage. Like I always wondered, what did she go home and tell Peter?
Right.
Yeah, Mark's video was no good. Like, what does he say? But then on Christmas Eve, Mark shows up at their house with a boombox that's playing carols and cue cards, and he holds up a cue card to Juliet and says, tell him it's carol singers. And then proceeds to unveil these fucked up cue cards of nonsense of I've always loved you. To me, you are perfect. Even if you were old and ugly, like I would still love you. And then he walks away. She runs after him, kisses him, and he's like, enough. Like, I will be content as friends. This is the most fucked up shit I have seen, Meg. I don't understand this part. I don't understand this part of the movie.
Well, okay, so because he is infatuated with her, we're not going to call it love, because he has a crush on
No,
her,
it's
because he's
infatuation.
attracted to her, he doesn't talk to her, right? They specifically said, oh, you don't even talk to her. You don't like her. He he avoids her, which is like a coping mechanism, but how can you tell
Mhm.
someone you're in love with them if you have never had a conversation with them?
Yeah, you know what? I could almost see that. You know what? Sure. Like, I think the trope of like loving your best friend's partner, it can be a good one. Like, there's some
I mean,
interesting things there, some interesting
Francesca's
tension.
book, right? Francesca's whole
There
book
we go.
in
Going back to our
Bridgerton. You
Bridgerton.
can do it well.
Yeah.
This is not being done well.
No, because like if Mark had never said anything to her, then I feel like it would have been fine. The first thing was, okay, you videotaped her. I know you didn't want anybody to see that, but still the fact that you did it is reading stalker to me. Like it is creepy to just do that. But the cue card thing at the end, I'm like, that is your best friend's
Wife. And you
wife.
just put her in a really, like, even from before he confesses anything, tell them that's carol singers. Let me, like, put you in a compromising position as a newlywed with my best friend. Let me, like, force you into secrecy in your marriage.
Yeah, essentially it's forcing her to tell a lie
Mm-hmm.
to Peter. Like I don't know what Peter's thoughts were in all of this. Like because I think he does say to Mark at some point like I love her, could you please try to like be nice to her because again, he thinks it's because she doesn't like Juliet. But like what happens after this? Like I've always imagined the continuation of this scene is she closes the door and goes, well, that was fucked up. And then goes and like sits down on the couch with Peter. The fact that she chases after Mark and gives him a kiss, like, thank you for stalking me.
Right.
I appreciate the fact that you have put me in this awkward position with your best friend. Like,
I am now
what is she?
complicit in this.
I don't get it. Like, and again, at the first time I saw this, I did think like, okay, awkward, maybe kind of cute. Like he loves her, but can't ever have her, and he's got to be okay with that. I was a young and naive 20-year-old,
Mm-hmm.
but now I'm like, oh no,
And
no
you know what?
boy,
I always wonder, like, what if Peter had come to the door? What if,
yeah.
like, then you're just standing there with cue cards and a boombox being like, hi, can I talk to your wife? It's not about you.
I actually feel like SNL or some other comedians have definitely
Maybe.
done a sketch
Yeah.
about that. That were like, if it's Peter that comes to the door, he like turns the cards around, like, hey, bro, it's Christmas, and I just want to tell you I love
I
you,
mean, you know
bro.
what? Maybe it was actually queer coded and he had to cover because he's in love with his best friend.
Maybe. So here's funny. So there
Like he
is
was
a
gonna show it to
sequel that
whoever
was
shows up.
yeah. So there was a sequel, quote unquote sequel to Love Actually that came out in 2017 as part of Red Nose Day, which is one of the UK's like one of their biggest telethon like fundraisers is Red Nose Day. So it was like a 15-minute short film. Like it was pretty short, but so it's set 13 years after the event, and they do bring back this cue card scene. So Juliet is on the couch with Peter. The doorbell rings. Juliet opens the door. It's Mark. Has the cue cards. And he says, tell Peter it's a fundraiser for Red Nose Day. She's like, it's a fundraiser. And essentially, like they tell each other, oh yeah, we're so happy with our lives. Mark introduces his wife to Juliet via these cue cards, who is Kate Moss. Because apparently in the original movie, he joked that he would marry Kate Moss one day. And here's Kate Moss. And then the final card is let's see what happened to the rest of our friends. And that kind of kicks off the rest of the follow-up short film. So like it's kind of cute. Like I hope they see how fucking dumb the original storyline was. Like if I look at all the plot lines, and it kind of makes sense for the types of love that they depict. We're gonna get into them, but there's we talked about Billy Mack and Joe. There's like longtime friendship. There's Juliet and Peter with romantic love. There's spouse is going through a hard time. There's new love. There's fresh dating. Like the very title of our show is First Dates and Soulmates because it does run the gamut from we're just meeting to far beyond that. What does this fit under?
Unrequited love?
It's
Unrequited attraction?
so creepy. I guess it's creepy as shit though. I'm like, when does unrequited love not be creepy?
When so
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, I want to know, what does Chiwetel Ejiofor's character think about all of this? Like, does he find out? Because like, I want to believe that Juliet would maybe tell him, if not that day, then like later. Oh, hey, babe, as like they're making brunch. Like, funny story. Mark came by the other day with cue cards. Turns out he doesn't hate me, because if not, that is a secret that she's kept from
yeah.
Peter, and I don't like what that makes me feel about her.
Or the bedrock of their marriage being shaken up by his best
Yeah.
friend. Eek. Okay, he's a creep. Moving on. What's
Yeah,
our
agreed.
next couple is
So
Colin Firth.
our next couple, yes, I'd say this is probably one of my favorites. So it's Jamie and Aurelia. So Colin Firth and Lucia Moniz. This one's kind of, it starts off sad because Jamie, played by Colin Firth, is married or has a girlfriend. I can't remember what their
Girlfriend. It's just a
relationship
girlfriend.
is. Yeah, so they're supposed to go to Juliet and Peter's wedding because they are friends, and she's like, "Oh, babe, I'm so sick. Like, you go." He's like, "Okay, I'll go by myself." He goes to the wedding. Cool. Before the reception, he goes home to check on her, like essentially bringing her soup, and finds out she is in bed with his brother. Oh, poor Colin Firth. So essentially, that kicks off. He goes to his cottage that he has in France to work on his book, and he has a housekeeper there. Her name is Aurelia, and she's Portuguese, and they don't have a common language. She does not speak English. She does not speak Portuguese.
Neither of them speaks
Um,
French, even though they're in France.
no, not at all. I always love it. This, I'm like, how dirty is he that he needs a daily housekeeper at this French cottage? Like, I assume she's also making him meals and things.
Yeah,
It's not just
probably.
cleaning. But still, also, they have like all these little moments. Like, she helps him, like he's typing outside on his typewriter, and pages of his manuscript go flying in the wind and in the water, and she helps save them. Like, they have all these moments. He goes back to the UK. He starts learning Portuguese. Eventually, goes back to France to find her, runs into her family, and they all like march to the restaurant where she's working. And he says in very broken Portuguese, like, "I love you." And she, who has been learning English secretly, says, "Yep, I'm going to do that."
Well, he says, "Will you marriage me?" Which is a great line. Will you marriage me? But
Yeah.
also,
So,
like, you don't have never had a conversation with her. Maybe start with like, you want to grab a cup of coffee.
yeah, that's like and this goes back to in our previous episode about Christmas tropes. Do you believe that people could like fall in love with someone that quickly that it would, marriage is like the proposal is a thing? Because I think, to your point, people could fall in love, but they would then say, "Now let's date."
Right. I have this cottage in our town, or was he renting it, or did they own
Mhm.
it? I don't know, but I have this cottage. I'll come back. You teach me Portuguese. I'll teach you English. Like, we'll go on dates. Like, not will you marriage me?
Yeah, like it was cute though. Like, if we kind of suspend our disbelief in
Mm-hmm.
terms of like romance and this grand gesture, and the fact that she is like, also, and she goes, "Then my answer is yes," because she's also been studying English just in cases,
Mm-hmm.
is really
It
cute because
is.
it does have like both of them are in this. It's not,
Both of them are
going
trying.
back. Yeah, it's not like going back to this public proposal of someone feeling pressured,
Mm-hmm.
because he is literally doing this in front of the entire town at this restaurant that is completely full. Which I also think is funny because apparently that restaurant, like that is in France, even though her family is Portuguese. So the entire restaurant would be French, but they're speaking in Portuguese. So how do people know to cheer?
Yeah. Is it a Portuguese restaurant in the south of France?
I don't, maybe, but yeah, because I looked it up. I was like, did he go back to Portugal? It's like, no, he went back to France.
France.
And I was like, interesting, because they don't have subtitles.
Yeah.
We get to see the subtitles. We know what's happening. Actually, I remember back in the day, when some people around would like watch movies in interesting ways that did not involve a DVD player or streaming. But life found a way. They had a version of Love Actually that did not have the subtitles
So they're
at
just
any time when they were speaking Portuguese. So they actually thought it was part of the thing. Like, we're not meant to understand what she is saying. And that's part of the storyline. So when they did see like a legit version on Netflix, they're like, "Oh my God, that's what they were saying?" Surprise.
That's, I think I'd actually prefer that. Because mostly she just mutters to herself about how what a slob he is.
Yeah, yeah. You fell in love with that girl.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Well, did she, or is she
Mm-hmm.
just attracted to him and she wanted to learn English? You know?
Yeah, I wish they had said, "Would you go on a date with me?"
Mm-hmm.
I think that would have been cuter,
And again, it comes
but
back to our grand gesture and wanting things to be
mm-hmm.
larger on screen. This is one of the I'm going to say lesser problematic plot lines for me because
Yeah.
they're both consenting. They're, they may not have conversations, but they spend some time together. They're in proximity with each other. I
Mhm.
remember on my first date with my husband, which was 9 hours long. We just talked forever.
Mhm.
And it was 2003. No, the movie came out in 2003. We started dating in 2009, but this came up because it was over the holidays. And we debated about what was the best, or no, what was the second best Love Actually plot, because both of us agreed that
Mhm.
this one was the best.
Yeah, I would agree. I think Jamie and Aurelia is my favorite.
Mm-hmm.
But what did y'all pick as your number two?
I did the porn stand-ins.
That makes sense. Which one did your husband pick?
Ooh. He's from Wisconsin. He probably picked the guy flying out to Wisconsin. I can't remember, but it made,
Oh, okay. We're gonna have to have a conversation with your husband.
che.
Yeah. Okay.
It's not
Excellent.
really.
So
I don't remember. I think we both thought it was a little. By that point, we had realized that it was a more problematic than we liked, but we both liked Colin Firth's plotline.
there you go. I think Jamie and Aurelia are probably the sweetest, and I think it does show that relationships can be built on more than just talking. Like going back to our previous thing with love languages, like quality time, acts of service.
Mm-hmm.
They are taking care of each other. They are appreciating each other, even if it's without words. But I still think should have a date first,
Yes.
where you both speak the
And I
language.
do
That'd be
love
great.
one of my favorite lines of the entire movie is when he gets out a bag of onions from his trunk, because that is obviously what you bring to Christmas. And then he drops it off and goes, "I gotta go." And the kids go, "I hate Uncle Jamie." Like, I think he had gifts in there.
I
Like,
do.
why was he holding a bag of onions?
I don't know. Maybe he went to Tesco and like forgot to take it out of his car. Who knows? Okay, let's go to the next storyline, which is the one that upsets me the most, and it is Harry and Karen and Mia. So Harry, played by Alan Rickman, the late great fucking Alan Rickman. I love him. He's married to Karen, Emma Thompson, who like a moment of awesome for Emma Thompson because she is
Her performance,
phenomenal,
devastating performance in this movie.
devastating. So this storyline, this is showing like the long time married aspect of love. So Harry and Karen have been married a long time. They have two children, and Harry engages in a flirtation with a woman at his office named Mia. She kind of like flirts with him very overtly. There's like this weird sexual undertone. We're getting into boss employee territory, which don't love. On top of the emotional cheating, but Harry buys this very expensive necklace. Karen finds it and thinks it's for her. Oh no, he gives it to Mia. He gives Karen a Joni Mitchell CD.
Which, to be fair, they talked about Joni Mitchell. It's a much more thoughtful gift. It's just not as expensive.
Well, also though, like she's a huge Joni Mitchell fan, and he bought an album that she most definitely would have had because it was an older album.
Right.
Yeah, and I was like, not a good choice. But anyway, she finds the necklace, thinks it's for her. At Christmas, she is gifted the Joni Mitchell CD and not the necklace, so she knows he's bought it for someone else. So she goes into her bedroom and puts on the song and just loses it in quiet devastation before putting herself back together to go have Christmas with her family. And essentially says to Harry, like, what would you do if you were me? Like, you have essentially fucked up. And he's like, yeah, I've been foolish. And they don't get a resolution
No.
in this story. Like, they are together later on in the film at the airport when they're picking some people up at the airport. But it's still very much tension there. We don't know if they're going to get through it. So, again, different aspects of love. But Alan Rickman is great in this movie because I want to love him so much because he's Alan Rickman, but he fucked up. But Emma Thompson, oh my God. For me, I might like Jamie and Aurelia's storyline the most. Emma Thompson by far has the best performance in this entire
Absolutely.
film. God, she's good.
Well, it's not just that moment of devastation. It's also like the way that she pulls herself back together for her kids. And then pulls him aside and very calmly says, like, would you stay knowing that life would be worse? Like, whew, that line kills me.
It's yeah, like I think at the end, Karen and the kids pick up Harry at the airport because he's essentially just come back from like a business trip, and it's very stilted. It's very tight. So again, the assumption is they're still maybe working through things, but again, it's not a storyline that I like because it's not happy. But I also, if you think about the narrative of the story being love is around us in many forms, it makes sense. It makes me a little sad.
It makes me a little
Makes me a
sad.
little
And
sad
it's
because
also
Emma
like,
Thompson deserves good
who
things.
are the only actors above the age of 40? in this.
It's true.
And she's the one
Yeah.
that has the unfaithful husband, and she's the one who gets
Hmm.
called like frumpy, and like there's a lot of, yeah, like this is the only long-term relationship that's in this, and it's fraught.
Yeah, it's not a good one.
No.
It would have been nice to see it balanced. Like, not to say I don't think this type of relationship should be showed, but it would have been nice to see another long term relationship that went well. Because if I jump to the next one, let's talk about Daniel. Liam Neeson is a widower, and he's one of Karen's closest friends who is helping him deal with the recent death of his wife. And he has a stepson who was, from his wife's previous marriage. So now he's lost his wife. He has a stepson he's not super close with, and he's trying to juggle all of these things. So his grief is showing up in a very different way from Emma Thompson's grief over Harry's affair. But like, it's why are people trying to set him up? His wife just died.
Like they have some footage from her funeral where it was like a week ago, and she's like, you need to get it back together. Like, you would think that the Emma Thompson character, Karen or whomever, would be a bit more compassionate given what she's going through, given she has
You
kids.
you would think so, and that's why it was really weird that it was. So have you ever seen Rent, but the movie version of Rent,
Oh
the
yeah.
musical? So it's the same thing that kind of shows up. So for me, like Roger, for example, is an addict and is HIV positive. His girlfriend, who was also an addict and HIV positive, unalived herself and left him a note that says, by the way, we've got AIDS. He is fresh out of rehab at the beginning of that. But the entire cast of characters is like, you should totally date Mimi, who is an
Who is
addict.
an
So
addict who is
one,
also HIV positive. Like,
yeah. So I was like, why are we pushing him into this relationship? This is not good for him because she's an addict who has not gone to rehab. He's just come out of rehab. She's not. They're both HIV positive. And his last girlfriend just unalived herself very recently. So the same thing with Daniel. Like, he does have his stepson Sam, played by Thomas Sangster, which is a great child actor in this, has a crush on one of his schoolmates. So Daniel kind of, in an effort to be closer to him, like helps him try and get the girl. But I would have liked it if Daniel's storyline had been more like the love of friendship and people supporting you through.
yeah, he didn't need
You
to
are
have
a recent widower.
Yeah, he didn't need to have the Claudia Schiffer show up. It could have just been
No.
Emma Thompson reaches out to make sure that he's okay, doesn't say anything about his love life because he just lost his beloved wife and like inherited a
Yeah.
child who, presumably they knew each other before that, but there was clearly some tension there. Like, this would have felt so much cleaner to me if it were just, I'm a stepdad, without also being joking about, oh, I'll marry someone like Claudia Schiffer, and then Claudia Schiffer shows up.
Claudia Schiffer playing a woman named Carol shows up. Yeah, I do like, though, like he has some really great moments with his
He
stepson.
does.
Sam falls for an American classmate, so he decides to learn to like play the drums to impress her because girls love musicians. And then he has the big run through the airport at the end of the film to like catch up to her, and he's just like, oh, like I do love you, or like gives him a kiss or something like that. And I'm looking at this going, this movie came out in 2003. This was post 9/11.
Yeah. There's no way.
No way.
No way. There's
no
actually,
way.
I don't know if you've ever watched the outtakes of this movie. Again, this is like when you're in college and you have the DVD, you watch the deleted scenes. There's a version of it where he does like gymnastics and backflips to get away from the security guards. It's ridiculous. But also, like, it's not just they have this conversation, he drums, and then he chases her down at the airport. She also points to him during the song that she's singing, which is like, I mean, she's beloved by everyone, and then she gets to sing All I Want for Christmas Is You.
Yeah.
Right?
So it is kind of cute. And in the Red Nose Day, actually, like sequel, they're together, which is kind of cute. So it's like Daniel, Liam Neeson's character, receives a surprise visit from Sam, who's 26, and he lives in New York. And it's like, oh, we haven't really been talking recently, but you're back. And then he's like, and here's Joanna. And Joanna proposes to Sam, the kid, like the former kid. And so it is kind of cute that they kind of like brought that back together. So again, what I like about this storyline is you have young love, kids. I love her. I want to be with her. And it's kind of fun in the sequel to see them get together. But I think as it is, that form of love is really cute. I just don't love that we had this widower storyline that was so recent that they were also trying to get him attached to someone. If he had been widowed and was trying to deal with his grief and felt that helping his stepson find love as a kid was almost like his outlet to heal, I would have liked that way more. But like Emma Thompson, girl,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah. And I think
he just
also,
lost it.
like, he fell in love with this girl without ever having had a conversation with her, but he says he's in love with her, so he learns to play the drums for her. And then he goes, but I need to learn, and here's another ticking clock. I need to learn to play the drums because she's moving back to America. And instead of the stepdad being like,
Mm-hmm.
she's moving across an ocean and you have no source of income, maybe pick someone else to have a crush on, sir. Like, let's talk about how grief works and how sometimes things don't work out.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, because
No, let's
we didn't see the grief affecting Sam too much. Like he just lost his
he
mom.
just loves
We
his
don't see
mom.
that too much. Interesting. I just don't think there's space for it because there's too many other
They
storylines.
do
But
cram a lot in here. And I would have
not the
no.
worst. I do want to move on to what I would consider third worst.
Should we rank these?
So I was like, maybe at the end, I will say my second worst is Juliet, Peter, and Mark, because Mark is just creepy with those cue cards. I would call this the third worst. And it used to be my favorite, and now not so much. It's David and Natalie.
I was just gonna say, is it the Hugh Grant one?
Yeah, it's
Yep.
David, is the Prime Minister of the UK, played by Hugh Grant.
What? You don't like boss employee when it comes to your tropes?
It's true. It's true. Okay, so Hugh Grant is Karen's brother. So here's another interconnected. It's Emma Thompson's brother. He's just elected prime minister. He is a single man, and he meets Natalie, who is a new junior member of his staff. Billy Bob Thornton shows up as the U.S. president, and he's kind of like attracted to Natalie, whom this movie keeps referring to as chubby. Like his chief of staff is like, oh, like it's a thick one on her. Like it's gross how they talk about Natalie.
That's one of my favorite lines. And like my best friend and I have quoted each other, would we call her chubby, like monthly for the last 20 years.
Oh my god, it's so bad. But essentially, like there's kind of like this tension because Natalie is like, she curses in front of him because she's kind of like, I don't want to say an airhead. She's not nervous, airhead, but if she's nervous, she kind of like says, "Oh fuck, shit." I said, "Fuck, shit." It's cute. It's kind of fun. And Hugh Grant is kind of like noticing her. And then the president of the United States assaults her. Mm-hmm. And David, because of this, he kind of stands up for the UK in a press conference, which cool. But then he has Natalie transferred because he's uncomfortable around her. I'm sorry, she just got assaulted by a world leader, and you're like, let's go put her over there. I don't want her in my office anymore. Doesn't talk to her. Doesn't say, are you okay? Does nothing. Just off he goes. And it's like, are you fucking kidding me? And then at Christmas, she sends him a card that's like, I am yours and only yours. Why? What has he done? So then we get back to that fun little like door-to-door caroling scene where the prime minister, he doesn't really know where she lives. He doesn't know her address. So he finds her neighborhood and he goes like door to door going, Natalie? And eventually finds her and says, I have to go to my niece and nephew's Christmas concert. Do you want to come with me? They kiss. They get unveiled by a curtain. Happy, happy, happy. In the sequel, they are still together, and he has been reelected prime minister in the Red Nose Day special. This is my third worst because Hugh Grant is endlessly charming. He does great work with Richard Curtis, but the whole like conversation around Natalie's body and the fact that he does nothing after she is assaulted by the president, like, oh man,
this is so clearly pre-Me Too, where it's like, let's just shuffle this away.
So is,
so
is, and I hate that his chief of staff, who is a woman, is the one talking most of the shit about Natalie.
Yeah, she's totally body shaming her, and like, she's curvy, but she's hot.
She's very hot.
She's really hot.
Martine McCutcheon, looking good, babe. Yeah, no, it's kind of because it has like these moments of like really sweet, could be cute. I do love the scene when he's going door to door. I'm like, you're the prime minister. You could definitely have MI6.
No,
get you her address.
You would just have it in your files because she works for you. I work remotely with my entire team, and I have all of their addresses in Gusto. Okay, like
he might not know where they are, but he would ask his chief of staff to, hey, can you please get me Natalie's address?
Right. I know. I understand that for dramatic purposes, it's more fun for him to go door to door, and so I think the reason that we were able to overlook all these problematic plot lines is they all had these iconic, really like visually stunning moments, so we sort of went like, ooh, the cue cards are memorable, we'll just ignore the fact that they're creepy. And like the prime minister going door
Yeah.
to door and singing "Good King Wenceslas looked out," like it's memorable.
I love it when they make him
It's
sing.
clever the way that they set it up. Like the plot itself is very cute. But the reason that he's going to find her door to door is like, well, why would you send someone a Christmas card that says I'm yours after they ignored you and transferred you?
Yeah.
It,
Essentially, which like that's not going to look good. People are going to be like, "What did you do to piss off the prime minister?" So for her career prospects, probably not great.
uh-huh.
So again, some good bits. Hugh Grant is very charming, but I don't love the body shaming. And the post Me Too, that's probably the one I've changed my opinion on the most because I used to think it was really cute. Not so much anymore. All right, let's talk about another one that's like a little bit sad. Sarah and Carl.
Oh,
So
Laura
Sarah,
Linney.
Laura Linney, is at Juliet and Peter's wedding. She's friends with Jamie, Colin Firth's character. She also works at Harry's graphic design company, Alan Rickman's company, and she's in love with the creative director Carl, who's played by
And they had their holiday
Rodriguez and
party
Toro.
at the gallery where Mark works. So it's all
Yes, the big cycle, right? So, Harry is trying to kind of like get them together, which also your boss trying to hook you up with a coworker is a little bit weird, but like, I can kind of let it go. And Carl drives her home. She invites him because she's had a crush on him forever. It turns out he's had a crush on her forever. But when they are beginning to get intimate, there's a phone call, and it's Sarah's brother Michael who is calling from a psychiatric hospital, and he like needs her. So she immediately turns her attention to him, and Carl leaves. And, they kind of see each other a little bit after that, but nothing really goes. And Sarah kind of calls her brother in tears, being like, here's a Christmas gift for you, and I love you. And Carl just kind of becomes like a non entity after that. This is really sad.
well, I mean, the subtext here is being a caregiver for a disabled person makes you unlovable. So that's a fun thing to bring up.
Yeah, I looked at that and I was like, that, yes. And how much of that is also Laura Linney's character, like not having boundaries? Like,
Yeah.
is she like not like, because yes, her brother is in a hospital, so she's not with him full time, but he does call her a lot. So again, it goes back to this idea of caregiving. Like, when do caregivers get to have time for them, and when do they get to do things? And I'm like, girl, Carl's hot.
Carl's
Like,
so hot.
Michael is in a hospital. He's surrounded by people who can take care of him. Like, where is her guilt coming from?
Where's her do not disturb button?
Yeah, I don't even think Apple had that on phones yet. It was 2003. Was the iPhone even out yet? I had a BlackBerry in 2003. So
I had the
iPhone
chocolate
came out.
razor that like slid up, so it
Oh
wasn't quite a
God.
flip phone, but it definitely still had T9.
Yeah, but like, it makes me wonder, is there a reason that she feels massive amounts of guilt? Like, because also they don't really say what is wrong with him other than the fact that he is in a psychiatric hospital. So it's like, did he attempt self-harm?
Right.
Is he developmentally disabled?
I think at some point she says like she moved to the UK for a job and she brought him, and that's her, like she's his only family. So she feels responsible for him. But there's also a point where you're like, okay, but he's, in the hospital. He's institutionalized. He has caregivers there. And you should be allowed to have your own life. But also, if Carl has seen her answering her phone at work, this shouldn't be a surprise. But if you're in the middle of getting it on, like, put your phone on silent.
Yeah, so that was like a little bit weird to me. Although I will say that in like the Red Nose Day sequel, her storyline is not in the original UK version because they aired two versions of it. They had
Oh.
the UK version and the US version. In the US version, she is given a storyline, and it's her and Patrick Dempsey.
Ooh.
So Sarah answers her phone like it's her brother calling, but it's Patrick Dempsey saying like, I love the way you always answer the phone, and essentially like, you're a great wife. So she does get a happy ending
Oh, good.
with Patrick Dempsey, which is nice. So this one kind of has that, like, that obligation of love is here and putting yourself second because of love for a family member. But I wish Carl had been a little bit more understanding. She just never tells him. He's just kind of like, oh, okay. And part of that is she doesn't tell him, so he doesn't know what's going on. So he can't have empathy or compassion there. But I feel like, Carl, if you really liked her, wouldn't you be like,
is everything
what's
okay?
going on? Can I help you with something?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a little weird, but I felt really bad for her when after Carl leaves and she's like in tears, but trying to like Smile for
Man,
her brother.
that
It's
Eva
so good.
Cassidy cover of Songbird.
Oh my god.
That's the
So
second most.
good. Talking about good musical cues.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many good musical cues in this. It's like the Kelly Clarkson, the Nora Jones, but that Eva Cassidy,
Hmm.
man, it gets me.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about what I think is probably one of the least offensive storylines in here. It's John and Judy.
I
So Martin
love John
Freeman
and
and Joanna
Judy.
Page.
Yes.
So they are professional stand-ins for films and happen to be working on a film where there are sex scenes. So they are the stand-ins. So for those of you who don't work in film or TV or understand how stand-ins are used, stand-ins are typically the same height and skin tone and build as the actor they are standing in for. And not even only height. I was working on a film last year that Don Cheadle was directing, and one of the stand-ins was not the same height as the main actor, but he had shoes that had a 9-inch platform on it.
Wow.
So the idea is that stand-ins come in. They will help the cameras block out their movements. They will help do the lighting, which is again why their skin tone tends to be very similar, so that the scene can be lit well. And they often do the rehearsals. And then when rehearsal is done, the real actors come in and replace the stand-ins, and things can move a lot more quickly because you've already done all the rehearsals and the setup with the stand-ins. So these stand-ins happen to be doing sex scenes. And they're very awkward and kind of cute.
It's like oddly cute for being the nudity section of the plot, where it's like, could you touch her nipples?
It is fun. So like they're kind of what's the other lives. It's so nice to find someone I can actually chat with as they're holding each other's nude body parts, which again is interesting. And I wonder if this has changed because I follow a couple of intimacy coordinators on Instagram. And even when nudity is shown, like women can do topless nudity and we'll see that. But there's always barriers
Mm.
in between, like skin on skin contact, especially when it's like genital or butt and sometimes even breasts. So I just thought that was kind of funny. Like that would be a new thing that would be added, I think, in if this film was made now, because intimacy coordinators are actually like hopefully going to be given union status soon, and they're going to be required on film sets. They definitely weren't back here, but it's just like a fun, cute little storyline. It's not much of anything, but it's very cute and very respectful because their entire relationship is consent based. And like Martin Freeman's like rubbing his hands before he grabs her breast. He's like, I gotta warm up my hands.
They're I think they've become my favorite.
Mm-hmm.
I found a Bustle article that says the porn storyline for Love Actually is the holiday movie's purest romance. Like it really is the most romantic one in there.
Oh, it's so cute. Again, least problematic, and then we do see them at the epilogue.
She's
They run
yeah.
into Tony, who works on the film, and Tony's going to be big in the last storyline. But they're engaged, and I was like, oh, that's so cute.
And
Like we know very little about
it
them.
gives you time for them to fall in love. It's not a week later he's
Yes,
going to ask to marry her, you know?
yeah. Although, like, it's a month later.
Is it a month?
The epilogue is set a month later.
Well, we don't know that was the first time they worked together either.
True, they might have met on previous films. Actually, I kind of like that if that's true.
Yeah.
Like they keep just meeting on different film sets.
Or maybe they ask to work together so that way they.
Oh, that would actually be really cute. Okay.
Okay.
I think that would be kind of fun. And they aren't in the sequel. So I wonder what kind of went on there. Interesting.
Well, probably Martin Freeman was just, being a hobbit or something.
Yeah, and like also like Alan Rickman and Emma Thompson, their storyline wasn't in the second one. I think Alan Rickman might have passed by then, but Emma Thompson wasn't in the sequel either. I would have liked to have seen what was on with them. Maybe he died in the movie too. Interesting. Okay.
Maybe Liam Neeson's character could help her process that instead of trying to force her into a new relationship.
Well, Liam Neeson is in the sequel. Daniel's in the sequel, right?
I'm saying if the Alan Rickman character died, then the Liam Neeson character, who has been widowed, would therefore help the Emma Thompson character.
No, but he's with Carol, aka Claudia Schiffer. By the way,
I think you're missing my point. It's fine. All right, our final one, the slutty harem.
Oh my god, I hate this one. I hate this one so much. This was not funny then. It's not funny now. Okay, Colin and Tony. You have Colin Frissell. Colin Frissell
is a great name.
Played by Chris Marshall. He's friends with Tony, who was like on the film set. He worked there. He's like, I can't get laid here. I can't get a girlfriend. You know what though? American girls think my accent is sexy. So I'm going to go to the America. And you know where he ends up? Fucking Milwaukee. He goes to Wisconsin, like Girls Gone Wild. And he's like, take me to a bar, bring me these hoes. And then what starts is the most random assortment of, I'm not even gonna call them cameos, but like
What
you
is
have Alicia Cuthbert,
January Jones?
January Jones, Shannon Elizabeth,
Huh.
and at the very end, Denise Richards. Like, I hate this storyline so much, man.
It definitely was not my husband's favorite. I was trying to come up with an example. But I mean, that idea of, well, people love my accent and therefore I'm going to go have this. I was about to say menage, but like, how many women were there that all of a sudden think that this geeky guy, oh, we don't have pajamas?
Yeah.
Like, it was so ridiculous.
Yeah, there were three of them. So you had like Stacy, who the credits describe as American Dream Girl. Then you had January Jones, known in the credits as American Angel. Alicia Cuthbert was American Goddess. Then you had Shannon Elizabeth as Harriet, the sexy one. Denise Richards as Carla, the real friendly one. So, creepy to begin with, but I think it was kind of funny that this idea of like Britishness, like British accents are like so hot that even if it's, no offense, Colin Frissell, not the most traditionally attractive man.
No.
And his personality, kind of trash. But they're like, ooh, his accent. I'm sorry, we sleep three to a bed and we don't have pajamas. Um, gross,
Gross.
gross, gross.
Gross.
So gross. And then at the end, that like month later epilogue, Colin comes back and Tony meets him at the airport. He's like, look at my bitches. And I brought a bitch for you, and it's Denise Richards.
Yes. I have obtained property from the colonies.
Especially since like his character now, we would almost describe him as like an incel now.
Yeah.
I can't get women. They must not like me. I have to go to America.
Right. I can't get women.
Like,
There must be something wrong with them.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So clearly, I have to go find me some more women's.
Let me find a better quality of woman because there's none in the UK that will date me, so therefore it's their problem. What?
Yeah, like what type of love is this storyline attempting to show?
I don't think there's any love here.
Yeah, I'm like, is it like lust? Is it like novel? Like novelty? Like, do we think past the epilogue? Are any of these people going to stay together, or is it more like it's like a vacation fling?
Yeah, I'm gonna say they just got a free trip. Like they got a flight.
Yeah, it's like a transient physical attraction, but even then,
There's not a lot of love.
I don't know. Yeah, it's not a huge fan of that. And then, of course, at that 1 month later epilogue, we see a lot of the characters at the airport. Billy's Christmas song. He's on a comeback. Juliet, Peter, and Mark meet Jamie and Aurelia at the airport when he comes back from France, having just proposed. As I said, Karen and the kids see Harry, and they're kind of cool towards each other.
Mm-hmm.
Sam meets Joanna, like his American friend who's visiting. Daniel has his Claudia Schiffer girlfriend and her son. John and Judy, our stand-ins, are off on their honeymoon because they just got engaged. And then Colin comes in with his American bitches and Denise Richards, who's wearing like a cowboy hat or something.
Was it Denise Richards or was it Shannon Elizabeth who's wearing the cowboy hat? I can't remember.
I think they both were.
Oh.
Because Wisconsin,
America.
Apparently, it should have been a Green Bay Packer hat. And then David, as prime minister, is just getting back, and Natalie runs and like jumps on him. And I was like, that's kind of cute.
Oh, you're so heavy.
Like that. Oh, they didn't say that though.
Yeah, there is.
Did they really?
There's
I don't remember hearing that.
When she jumps on him, he's like, "Oh, you're so heavy."
Okay, never mind. I take back my comment. I don't remember him saying that, and I don't like that at all.
I mean, to be fair, she is a human adult who is jumping on another human adult. You are going to be heavy, especially when you're not expecting it. But he like grabs her butt to hold her up and makes a fat joke. It's fun. It's fun.
I don't love it. Final thoughts on Love Actually, Meg?
Like I said, there are still so many iconic scenes that have culturally impacted society, even if it's just SNL spoofs, even if it's just, it has been an influence on future rom-coms in so many ways, especially the sort of interconnected storyline and not everything has to be romantic. But it's also the only movie that's done this. Like no movie that has done an interconnected storyline quite like this has been as successful. So it does feel a little bit like lightning in a bottle. And now that we're looking back on it, we're like, what? Like even the critics then were like, there's some problems with this. But we were able to look past them. I don't know. It's not my favorite Christmas movie, but it still feels like a formative movie in my life somehow.
Yeah, I would agree. This is not something I would rewatch at Christmas. I would
Mhm.
watch a couple clips of it on YouTube to see like
Yeah.
the storylines I actually like, and then I would probably let it go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's got some good points. I love Jamie and Aurelia. I think is probably the best out of all of them. But even then, again, just go on a date, y'all.
It's not
Just go
perfect.
on a
None of
date.
these are perfect.
There's no visa issue here that you need to like marry right away to like keep her in the country. We don't need that. David and Natalie originally I thought was quite cute. And now I'm like, oh, not so much. Emma Thompson is resplendent and lovely, and Alan Rickman,
Mhm.
even though he plays a complete asshole, is
Well, the
fabulous
performance can
in
be
this
good
movie.
even
I
if we
love him
don't
and
like the
everything.
character, right? So we can
Very
acknowledge
true.
the acting is great, even if the script leaves something to be desired.
Very, very true. All right. Well, before we head in for our close, a gentle reminder to please subscribe, give us some stars, give us a like, leave us a review, share with all your friends. Check us out on social media at First Dates and Soulmates. You can check out our extended show notes for a list of any books that we recommend and some other fun stuff. Meg, what are you reading, writing, ranting, or raving about this week?
You were talking about intimacy coordination as a job, as a career, and it got me thinking about You Had Me at Ola by Alexis Daria. It is two actors who are working on a movie set, and they actually do have an intimacy coordinator come in to work with them. And I love a good celebrity romance, and having the intimacy coordinator on set, that was the first time that I'd ever even heard of that role. And I think it was handled really well there. So if you want, I mean, they don't actually get naked in the book, so we don't get quite as much, Judy love. But that is what I'm thinking about this week in terms of what I'm reading. Nikki, what about you? Reading, writing, ranting, or raving?
I think last week I mentioned the Fae Coin series and how I loved the first book by AJ Sherwood. So last week I went back and I reread some of her books, and it's two books. It's the her Legends of Loeb Den Heron series. It's a two-book series because I wanted something that was like a little bit fantasy, a little bit political, with a little bit of that yearning trope that I love. So it's a two-book series. It basically between countries that one of them is kind of Japan-ish, the other one is more like Europe-ish. But basically, the two main characters, there was a war against this other country, and these two countries were like allies. So each of the main characters is a general from each country. They got really close during the war, and when the war ended, the Japanese-ish country couldn't afford to keep any of its army. They had no money left. They were so decimated by the war that General Brahms says to Ren, hey, you should just come back to my home country with me. Like, I know you're gay, but you could still, you could probably still be happy in my country. You're my best friend. So he takes Ren with him back to his home country, and the queen of his country just falls in love with him and like makes him the
Oh.
warden of her castle. So he's immediately elevated to like this status in their society. But Brahms is sent away on a 2-year mission to rebuild a fortress, and he's like, "But I
Oh.
want to stay with Ren." So they're apart for 2 years, and then Ren is in a country where same-sex relationships don't really happen. So he kind of has like a dalliance with a courtier that goes really badly. Brahms, who's far away and has been away for a while, hears about it, immediately gets enraged. He goes, "Oh shit, I think I love Ren." And he's a very taciturn, quiet man. So he comes back to the castle where Ren has been warden for 2 years. And he's not a talker. So he doesn't just straight up say, "I want to marry you." Ren's like, "Oh, you just still think I'm your best bud." And then there's all this castle intrigue that's going on. Like there's a political marriage happening. There's people breaking into the castle. There's plots afoot, and Ren's trying to put out these fires. And Brahms is just like, "Dude, I just want to get married right now. Thank you." It's very good. 2-book series. It's just really well done. Like I like the world building, I like the plot lines, and I love it when you have like it's not necessarily grumpy sunshine because Ren is a killing machine. He's a very competent general. But Brahms is like one that does not talk. He's kind of one of those characters that like communicates in grunts, and people are like, "You understand him?" And Ren's like, "Yeah, I do." It's a great series, though. Highly recommend AJ Sherwood's Legends of Loeb and Heron. It's a fourth point of contact and zone of action is the 2-book series. Delightful.
Love it.
Delightful.
That sounds amazing. I'm totally going to check that out.
There you go. Awesome. All right. Well, everyone, thank you so much for checking us out. Next week, Christmas in July continues, where I am interviewing soon to be famous author Bailey Seaborn. Who is she? You'll have to wait and see. Catch you then.
Bye.